This video is about setting up SiteAudit security alerts. SiteAudit version 6.8 introduced security tracking. The tracking identifies device vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities are summed up by open TCP ports like the FTP port 21 and the Telnet port 23, as well as weak Snmp implementations. Both allow hackers to disrupt printing operations, and so it's important to create mechanisms to prevent such breaches. Now, with SiteAudit version 7, SiteAudit has expanded this to include security alerting. Fleet managers and/or security teams can be alerted when open or closed ports are changed and when SNMP implementations change as well. Notification or alerting capability works in a similar way to SiteAudit's Move Add Change alerting. Together, the security tracking and alerting form a SiteAudit security workflow. This begins by running the SiteAudit security audit. The audit identifies vulnerabilities and makes recommendations to improve security, like which devices are most vulnerable and where they're located, so that you can create a security workflow action plan. Now, let's look at an example. This is the SiteAudit inventory viewer. And what we're looking at is the inventory view where you'll just see the tracking for security. What you see in the view is there's a column called Open Ports, SNMP version, SNMP security level, and SNMP community. Now, if we look at a device, what you see in this one is that device has port open 21, which is the FTP port, and it's got port 23 open, and its SNP version is 1. Device below that doesn't have any vulnerable ports open. 21 and 23 are not open. It has implemented SiteAudit version 3, but no authentication or privacy is set up. So this printer is not completely secure, but it has implemented a more secure SNP implementation. The way this tracking is used is it's used by the SiteAudit Analyzer security audit, and it takes this information in about port vulnerabilities and SNP implementation, and it creates a rating, and you can see where your overall fleet, whether it's at a low rating or at a good rating when it comes to risk. And then it'll help you identify which devices are most vulnerable and which ones you should mitigate first. So that's really the first step in the security workflow. Now, you want to improve that by closing those ports and improving the SNP implementation. And as well as you want to be notified if any of those ports or implementations change. So to do that, you would set up a security notification rule, and that's what we'll do next. So to do that, you would go to Setup, down to Notification Configuration, and I'm going to create a new rule, which I'll call Security Alert. And I'll add conditions for that rule. And those conditions will be based on alert codes. And alert code is a defined incident. So an alert code could be, for example, jam. So if you wanted to create an alert for all jams, then you can use the alert code as opposed to using an alert description, which may include, say, paper jam. Alert code is a way of also creating a threshold, and there are move, add, change thresholds you can create using the alert code, like location or department. So if a device moved from one department to another, then you could be alerted to that by using a MAC threshold. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to set up security thresholds First one I'll set up would be the Snmp protocol change, and you can see that this has a number identified with it, and it's a threshold. So the way this works is that uh, Senate is doing its monitoring, and once a change has been detected, it'll put it into the incident history, and then the notification rule will evaluate that threshold, and if it's true, then it'll send out an alert. Um, Now, the second thing I might want to do when I'm setting up a security alert is I may want to also include any chance of port changes as well. So I'll go ahead and select alert code again, and this time I'll select the open ports change threshold. And so what this would do is that if a port was changed, was closed or opened, then that would be a change which you could be alerted to. In this rule configuration, I'm going to change this from and to or, so I can consider either case, an SNMP protocol change or an open port change. So that would be the basis for my security alert rule. And then, of course, I would want to have this go to one or more people. Um, and I might want to also include in the subject line, I might want to include, for example, if it moved from a department, I might want to have the department in the subject line. I might also want to know the model um, of the device. And so when I receive this, or when this person receives the alert, using a keyword like department or model, um, those department names and model names will be inserted into the subject line. So I can have a sort of a basic security alert rule like this. I could also make it a little bit more granular. I could add in some refinement here. I could say, well, I'm only interested in specific models. So I could say, or manufacturers in this case. So I might want to make sure that it's just, maybe I'm just concerned about Packard models. And I could also narrow it down to specific departments too. So I could say any department that is related to sales. So any device that's in a sales department that's also a Hewlett Packard, and it has a port that opened, then I could get SAM could get an alert on that. Now, the way that the monitoring works is that the um, port open and close monitoring is done on each monitoring cycle prior to the threshold evaluation. So that may depend on the size of the environment which SiteAudit is monitoring. Um, Also, when it comes to the SNP monitoring, that's done on the discovery cycle. And by default, that's a 7-day cycle. You could certainly change that in the application settings to a more frequent discovery cycle, but that's the cycle that the SNMP changes and the thresholds are evaluated on. And that's how you would set up the security alert. As I mentioned, you'd also put an incident into the incident history here as well. And so if you wanted to create a report from incident history based on protocol change or a port change, you could also get a report out of the incident history if those incidents were ever happened. That's how security alerting works and how it fits into the SiteAudit security workflow.